The wind howled down Ninth Street, tossing plastic bags like tumbleweeds across cracked concrete. Under the flickering sign of Manny's Deli, a man in a janitor's coat unwrapped a foil bundle from his pocket. One sandwich, wrapped with care, probably made hours ago. He stared at it for a moment. Then, footsteps. A woman, overdressed for this side of town, heels clicking, hair pinned like she belonged in a magazine, stood near the bench, visibly trembling. Her hands were empty. Her eyes darted between neon signs and closed doors. She looked lost. The man noticed the way she rubbed her arms. He glanced down at the sandwich again, sighed, then stood and approached her. "You okay, ma'am? I missed my train. Everything's shut." She hesitated, pride dancing with desperation. "You hungry?" he asked. What?" He handed her the sandwich. "It's not much, but it's warm." She blinked, lips parting. "But what about you?" He offered a soft, tired smile. "I've had worse nights." Their fingers brushed as she accepted it. Moments later, a black car, glossy, out of place, turned the corner and idled at the curb. A man in a suit opened the back door for her. Before stepping in, she turned. "What's your name?" "David," she nodded. "No last name needed." Then she was gone, taillights swallowed by the night, and David stood alone again, empty hands in cold pockets, and no dinner. Emotional connection sparked, mystery planted. Who is this woman? Why does she care? The city slept under a quilt of dim streetlights and sirens far off in the distance. In a quiet parking lot behind a laundromat, a faded blue sedan sat tucked between dumpsters, the windshield fogged gently from within. Inside, David adjusted the backseat blanket, tucking it tighter around a little girl with curly hair and bruises under her eyes from sleepless nights. His coat draped over her like a second layer of love. He leaned against the window, his breath forming halos in the cold air. Then, quietly, like a ritual, he bowed his head. "God, I know it ain't much, but thank you." She laughed today. "Just once, but I heard it. Please, just let her keep laughing." The glove compartment held his whole world. A picture of a smiling woman holding their daughter, a crumpled drawing labeled "Daddy's work," and a note from the school about unpaid fees. David blinked hard. The silence was heavy. Not just from the hour, but from everything left unsaid between him and life. A soft stirring, her tiny voice, half asleep. "Daddy?" He turned. "Yeah, baby?" She reached for him with one hand. "I miss Mom," she whispered. He slid into the back seat beside her, pulling her onto his chest. She rested there, heart over heart. "I know," he whispered, voice cracking. "Me too." Outside, the wind picked up. Inside, time paused. Just a father and daughter, floating in a world too busy to notice. Quiet heartbreak. Safe in his arms, she drifts off, but he stays awake, staring into darkness. Woman from the sandwich moment returns and watches silently. Part 3. Clean floors. Dirty looks. Morning came too early. David wiped down his uniform with a baby wipe, splashed water from a gas station sink on his face, and kissed his daughter's forehead before heading into the high-rise across town. Marble floors. Gold trim on the elevators. A reception desk bigger than his car. He pushed his janitor cart slowly, careful not to leave streaks behind. He avoided eye contact. Always did. But today, the back entrance was blocked by a delivery truck, so he entered through the lobby. Just once. The moment he did, a voice sliced the air like glass. "You! What the hell do you think you're doing?" David turned. A man in a blazer and Rolex stormed toward him, expression curled in disgust. "I told you people to use the back. You don't belong out here." David lowered his eyes. "I'm sorry, sir. The delivery truck—" "I don't care. You're tracking dirt where clients walk." David looked down. The soles of his shoes were clean. Cleaner than the man's mouth, but he nodded. "Won't happen again." The man scoffed and turned away, tossing, "You're lucky to even be here," over his shoulder. David tightened his grip on the mop handle, jaw clenched. Pain turning inward like always. Then, Heels clicked across the floor. He glanced up, her, the woman from the night before. Hair pulled back, coat wrapped in elegance. Standing by the reception desk, watching. Not judging. Not speaking, just observing. Her eyes held something different. Not pity, recognition. He straightened up, wiped his hands, and looked away. Some things, like dignity, he still had. Her gaze lingers on him, unreadable. Why is she here? Why now? He hesitates, then sees his daughter coughing. And agrees. The mop bucket sloshed as David wheeled it toward the service door, the humiliation of the morning still stinging in his chest. He just wanted to disappear. Then came a voice. Calm, elegant, unmistakable. David? He froze. Turned. The woman from last night stood in the hallway, the glow from the skylight crowning her in pale gold. She didn't belong in this building of polished arrogance. She softened it. You work here? She asked. He nodded. When they let me, a faint smile touched her lips. You gave me your dinner last night. I didn't even thank you properly. You don't owe me that, he murmured. I think I do. She paused, studying him the way one studies a painting, looking for the hidden story beneath the strokes. Do you have a daughter? His shoulders tensed. How'd you know? The lunchbox in your cart, she said softly. It has her name written in hearts. He almost smiled. Almost, she took a step closer. I have a place outside the city. It needs care. A gardener, maybe a housekeeper. It's quiet, safe. You'd have a roof, food, a fresh start. David blinked, uncertain whether to laugh or cry. Why would you help someone like me? Because you didn't think twice before helping me? Silence filled the corridor, thick, fragile. He lowered his eyes. Ma'am, I can't accept charity. Then don't, she said gently. Accept a chance. That night in his car, he watched his daughter coughing softly in her sleep, the blanket too thin against the cold. He clenched his fists, remembering her offer, and for the first time in a long time, he whispered, Maybe it's time. He looks up at the night sky, torn, between pride and love. The first thing David noticed was how the air smelled different, like jasmine and something expensive he couldn't name. The mansion loomed with glass walls, silent chandeliers, and the kind of quiet that makes people whisper. His daughter Lila wasn't whispering. She ran across the grand foyer in her two big sneakers, arms wide. It's like a princess castle. Lila, David said, panicked. Slow down. But it was too late. Her muddy footprints streaked across the marble like an unspoken crime. A woman in a gray blouse. The house manager gasped. Sir, please. The floors. David scooped Lila up. Sorry, we'll clean it. I'll clean it. The woman raised an eyebrow and disappeared into a side room, likely to report the incident. David's ears burned. You gotta be careful, he whispered to Lila. We don't belong here. But she said we could come, Lila replied. You said she was nice. He didn't have an answer. Later, while unpacking a duffel bag into a guest room closet far too big for them, he noticed a door cracked open across the hall. Inside, a room full of sunlight and silence, and at the center a grand piano, covered in dust, but elegant, waiting. He stepped inside, touched the edge of the keys, didn't play. You know how? A voice asked from behind. He turned. The woman stood in the doorway watching. Used to, David said. What changed? He hesitated. My wife died. Music didn't feel like music anymore. She nodded, a softness entering her expression. Maybe this place could use some music again. She leaves the room, but the camera lingers on David, staring at the piano like it still holds pieces of him. Dust floated through the sunlight like falling memories. Lila tiptoed across the old hardwood floor, peeking behind silk curtains and spinning slowly in the echo of her own footsteps. Daddy, she whispered. This room feels like magic. She reached the grand piano and placed her tiny hands on its cold ivory keys. Can I touch it? David nodded slowly from the doorway. Gently, she pressed one note, soft and high, like a bell ringing from a faraway past. The sound filled the room. David closed his eyes. A flash. His wife laughing on their wedding day, slipping a music note charm into his palm. Him playing their favorite lullaby while Lila, still in diapers, wobbled around the living room. Her funeral. Silent. Musicless. He opened his eyes. The silence in the room had returned. "Play something," Lila said, wide-eyed. "I can't," David murmured. "Why not?" He stepped forward, his fingers grazing the keys. But they didn't feel like home anymore. They felt like doors he'd closed long ago. Because sometimes music hurts. Lila didn't understand. Not fully. But she came and wrapped her arms around his waist anyway. "Maybe it can make us feel better too," she whispered. David's hand hovered over middle C, then dropped back to his side. Not yet. He turned and quietly led her out. Behind them, the grand piano sat untouched. But for the first time in years, it wasn't forgotten. The piano remains in the sunlight, silent, but now watched. The dining room was too quiet for its size. A long glass table stretched like a runway, untouched silverware perfectly aligned. Candles flickered but gave no warmth. David sat at the far end, stiff in a borrowed shirt. Lila swung her legs under the seat, humming gently. The same note she'd pressed on the piano earlier. The woman, Evelyn, poured herself a glass of red wine. Her fingers trembled slightly, but she masked it well. "This house used to be louder," she said, eyes distant. "My son would run through those halls in muddy shoes. I didn't care then." David looked up. "What happened to him?" Evelyn paused. "He died. Car accident. 3 years ago." The hum in Lila's throat faded into stillness. "I'm sorry," David said gently. Evelyn nodded. "Everyone thinks money fills the holes. It doesn't. It just makes the silence louder." David understood that kind of silence, not the absence of sound, but the absence of them. Lila fidgeted in her seat. "Was he funny?" Evelyn blinked. "Yes. He once glued macaroni to my car keys." Lila giggled, and Evelyn, after a moment, smiled. Not politely, not socially, genuinely. "Would it be okay if she called me Auntie?" Evelyn asked softly, looking at David. He turned to Lila. She beamed. "Auntie Evelyn!" It echoed warmly through the room, like music returning to a house that had forgotten joy. Evelyn looked down, eyes glassy. "That sounds nice?" For the first time in years, Evelyn lets out a soft laugh, one that doesn't sound borrowed. The evening settled slow and golden across the backyard. Crickets had just begun their song, and Evelyn sat in the garden, sipping tea beneath a warm lantern glow. David sat across from her, his elbows on his knees, watching Lila dance barefoot in the grass, twirling with wild joy. "She's got music in her," Evelyn said. David nodded. "Her mother used to say she was born humming." Evelyn glanced at him. "Did you ever play for her?" A pause. David stared into the distance, as if memory itself had weight. "There was a recital," he said. "First grade. Lila practiced for weeks. She picked the piece herself." Evelyn leaned in, quiet. "I promised I'd be there. Even left early from work. But I stopped at a bar. Just one drink. Just to calm the nerves." His voice cracked. "I got there as she finished her last note. She looked right at the empty seat in the front row." Evelyn exhaled slowly. "I've never seen her smile the same since." Behind them, Lila had stopped spinning. She stood near the porch, quiet now. David hadn't noticed. "I let her down," he said. "And every day since I've tried to make up for it. With clean clothes, bedtime stories, everything but the one thing she actually wanted." "What was that?" Evelyn asked. "Me." "Sober?" "Me." Silence held for a beat. Then, soft footsteps. Lila walked over, climbed gently onto the bench beside him, and laid her head on his shoulder. David froze. No words, just her small arms wrapping around him. Forgiveness, wrapped in silence. David finally exhales, not because he spoke his truth, but because she heard it. The morning sun cut through the bay windows, casting long piano key shadows across the living room floor. The silence wasn't heavy today. It felt like something waiting to begin. Evelyn stood beside David, arms folded but eyes soft. "He's shy," she whispered, nodding toward a boy hiding behind a column. "But brilliant!" The boy peeked out, maybe 11, maybe 12. Thin hands and darting eyes. David crouched down. "Ever touch a piano before?" The boy shrugged. "My mom says I mess up everything." David smiled gently. "Pianos don't care about mistakes. They just wait for you to try." Later that week, notes began filling the once silent mansion. In one montage moment, David guided the boy's fingers along a scale. In another, Lila clapped in time from the corner chair. The boy grinned. Each day the music grew more confident, so did David. He no longer flinched when passing the piano. He lingered, tapped rhythms on the edge, hummed old tunes under his breath. One night after the house had gone still, David sat alone at the bench, just him and the piano. He placed his fingers gently on the keys, paused, and then played. A slow, simple melody, broken in places but honest, like a wound learning to close. Upstairs, Lila listened from the hallway, smiling. Downstairs, David finished the final note and breathed out. He hadn't smiled in weeks, but now he did. Just a little. But it stayed. His reflection in the piano lid looks back, not broken, but healing. The dining room was alive with silver clinks, shallow laughter, and conversation dripping with expensive perfume. Evelyn had invited a few friends, charity board members, art patrons, the kind who never looked at price tags. David sat at the far end, uncomfortable in a collared shirt that still carried his workman's posture. Beside him, Lila held her fork awkwardly and whispered, "Why are they using 3 spoons?" David smiled, whispering back, "Rich people puzzles." Across the table, a woman in pearls leaned in. "Evelyn, your guests are so diverse these days." Laughter. Another guest chimed in. "Did you say he's a janitor? That's noble. Truly? We need more humble heroes in this world." David's grip on his water glass tightened. He said nothing. "I assume he's here for one of your foundation projects?" a man asked. Evelyn's jaw twitched. "I'm here," David said slowly, "because she invited me. No strings, no spotlight." The woman in pearls sipped her wine. "That's adorable." Lila stood abruptly, her chair screeching. "You don't talk to my dad like that." The room froze. She looked straight at the pearl woman. "He's the best piano teacher. And the best dad." And he gave someone his last sandwich just 'cause they looked cold. Dead silence. David stared at his daughter, heart thudding in his chest. Evelyn smiled. "Proud. Maybe," she said calmly. "We should all listen more and judge less." The mood shifted. Forks paused mid-air. Lila sat back down, cheeks flushed, but her chin lifted. David reached under the table and squeezed her hand. Across the table, even the pearl woman lowers her eyes. Quietly, uncomfortably aware she just got schooled by a child. The house was quiet again, not with peace, but with something unspoken. David wandered the halls after the dinner guests left, still haunted by their polished smiles. He entered the music room to find the grand piano lit gently by the hallway lamp. And there it was, an envelope, white, thick, resting atop the keys like it had been waiting for him. His name on the front, in Evelyn's elegant handwriting. He opened it, a check, folded with care. Too many zeros. He stared. His jaw tightened. His chest tightened more. It wasn't gratitude. It felt like payment. A fee for being poor, for showing up, for being her project. Behind him, Evelyn stepped into the room. "I didn't want to hand it to you," she said. "That felt..." David snapped the envelope shut. "Felt like what? Like paying off a stray dog?" Her eyes widened. "That's not what..." "I taught your student, cleaned your floors, earned my place here. But this makes it feel like I was never meant to stay." Evelyn took a breath. You've misunderstood. I've seen charity dressed as kindness before. It's always followed by the door." He left the room. Moments later, Lila ran in after him, confused. "Daddy, where are we going?" He didn't answer. Outside, bags packed hastily, David gripped the steering wheel. Anger pulsed behind his eyes. Lila held the envelope in her hands. "You didn't even open it," she whispered. A tear slid down her cheek. Her words hang in the silence, sharper than anything Evelyn could have said. The fluorescent lights hummed low over the pediatric wing. David sat in the corner of a hospital room, head in his hands, while machines beeped beside Lila's bed. She'd collapsed that morning. Too much stress. Not enough food. The doctor called it emotional exhaustion and dehydration. David called it something worse. His fault. Evelyn entered quietly, holding a folder in her hands. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at him. Not with anger, but pain. "I didn't write a check," she said. "You never opened the envelope." David didn't look up. She gently placed the contents in his lap. A letter and a brochure. Full music scholarship. Child of applicant receives private tutoring, meals, and housing. David's eyes scanned the words in disbelief. "This was real," he whispered. "I saw your talent. I saw your heart. And I believed you deserved a future." His voice cracked. "I thought you were paying me to leave quietly." Evelyn shook her head. "I was asking you to stay with purpose." He stood slowly, walked to the bed, and brushed Lila's hair from her forehead. Her skin was pale, her breathing soft. "I left when her mom died. Not physically, but inside," he whispered. "I thought being strong meant hiding the pain." Evelyn said nothing. David leaned down, kissed Lila's hand. "I'm done running." His eyes filled with tears, but he didn't blink them away. "From now on," he whispered, "she gets all of me." Evelyn watches as David places the letter beside Lila, a quiet promise folded in ink. The curtains rippled softly, hiding the glow of the stage beyond. Soft murmurs from the audience filtered through the velvet as Lila sat on a folding chair, hands trembling in her lap. She wore a pale blue dress, her hair curled like her mom used to do it. Her violin sat in its case beside her. Unopened, David crouched beside her, his tie crooked, breath calm. "You okay, sweetheart?" She shook her head. "I practiced. I really did. But now, I feel small." He smiled gently. "You don't look small. You look like every bright note I've ever heard." She tried to smile. It wobbled. David sat beside her. "You remember what I told you about the music?" She nodded. "It doesn't have to be perfect. Just honest?" "That's right." He looked toward the light behind the curtain. "Out there, nobody knows your story, but when you play, they'll feel it." She swallowed hard. "Will you come with me?" David blinked, surprised. "I'm not dressed. I didn't bring—" "I don't care. I just want you." He looked at her. At the little girl who once spun in dirty sneakers, across a marble floor. At the little girl who forgave him without needing words. He stood, held out his hand. She took it without hesitation. Together, they walked toward the edge of the curtain, two silhouettes in the soft darkness. The announcer's voice boomed. "Next up, Lila and David." The lights shifted. The stage waited, and this time he didn't let go of her hand. As the curtain begins to rise, their fingers tighten, not out of fear, but togetherness. The curtain rose slowly. David and Lila stood center stage beneath the warm glow of chandelier lights. Two simple chairs, a grand piano to the left. A hush fell over the room. No orchestra, no introductions, just them. David sat, taking the piano bench. Lila lifted her violin, fingers shaking, until he nodded. She took a breath. Then they began. The music was soft at first, uncertain, like a memory trying to form, a slow waltz of keys and strings. But with each passing measure, something in the notes deepened. The audience leaned in. It wasn't just a song. It was a story. Of nights in a car under blinking streetlights, of missed recitals, of a father's guilt, of a daughter's hope. Each chord carried pain, love, and forgiveness. Lila's eyes closed as she played, pouring herself into each note. David followed her lead, smiling for the first time on stage. Backstage, Evelyn stood still, hand over her chest. She hadn't felt her son's presence in a long time, but now, watching them, she swore she heard footsteps from the past dancing through that melody. As the final note rang out, the audience remained quiet, breathless, then a single clap, then another, and then a standing ovation. David looked at Lila, tears in his eyes. She looked right back, glowing. In the audience, Evelyn dabbed her cheek with a silk handkerchief. It wasn't just music, it was healing, shared. David steps down, lifts Lila into a proud embrace, and the room erupts. But Evelyn simply smiles, one tear falling down her cheek, finally free. The mansion grew quieter after that night. No more practice echoes, no more formal dinners, just stillness, as if it had finally served its purpose. Weeks later, a moving truck rumbled down a tree-lined street in a modest part of town. Not fancy, not perfect, but real. David carried a box labeled Lila's Stuff up the porch steps of a small house with chipped paint and a crooked mailbox. He paused at the door, smiled, and turned the key. Inside, sunlight spilled through lace curtains. The floors creaked with character. There was no chandelier, no marble, just warmth. Lila ran room to room, laughing. "There's a swing in the backyard." David chuckled. "I'll have to test it first, for science." A small upright piano sat against the wall. Second-hand, a little out of tune, but loved. On the wall hung a photo Evelyn had framed for them. Lila and David on stage, eyes closed in perfect harmony. David now taught music at a local community center. Kids who couldn't afford lessons came every Saturday. Some stayed after class just to talk. Sometimes Evelyn visited, always with a new donation, always with less pain in her eyes. That night, as David tucked Lila into bed beneath a real roof of their own, she whispered sleepily, "Daddy, you gave up everything." He brushed her curls back. "But now," she murmured, "we have it all." David's eyes burned with quiet tears. Not of sadness, of arrival. He looked around their tiny home, and for the first time, didn't feel small. The screen fades in with soft piano music. The same melody David and Lila performed together, now replayed like a memory. Evelyn's voice carries over a montage of moments, soft and steady. One sandwich, that's how it started. We see that night replayed in slow motion. David handing her the wrapped foil with tired hands and warm eyes. "He didn't know who I was, didn't ask for anything, just saw someone cold, and gave her his only dinner." Flash cuts of Lila sleeping in the car, David mopping marble floors, the black car disappearing into the night. Sometimes life doesn't give you signs. It gives you people. The montage shifts. Evelyn standing in the hallway, watching David scrub quietly. Then the piano room. Lila's laughter echoing off stained glass windows. He thought he had nothing to offer, but what he gave was music. Forgiveness. A second chance. We see David and Lila walking hand in hand onto the stage again, this time from Evelyn's point of view, as if watching her own lost son return through the notes. The music swells. Now we're at Manny's Deli, the small sandwich shop from the first scene. Inside, behind the counter, hangs a new photo. David, Lila, and Evelyn, all smiling together at the music recital. Below it, a brass plaque reads, "One meal, one miracle." The bell above the shop door jingles. A stranger walks in from the cold. The screen fades to black, and Evelyn's voice returns one last time. Kindness echoes longer than we think, sometimes forever. The final piano note lingers, soft, whole, and full of everything they've become.